Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of Average Joe Sports, a sports lovers podcast. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the pod today. If you could, please take a second to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps the channel out a ton and also allows me to continue making more content just like this. So without further ado, let's get right into it. In this episode of Average Joe Sports, it's my week 1 review, and we're going to start off with the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Atlanta Falcons, with the Eagles beating the Falcons by a final score of 32-6. Now, Hurts went 27 for 35, threw for 264 yards, 3 touchdowns, and also added 62 yards on the ground. Devonta Smith scored his first NFL touchdown. Rager also added one as well, and the Philadelphia Eagles defense held Atlanta to just 3 for 14 on third down and 260 yards of total offense. Matt Ryan didn't look so well, going just 21 for 35 for 164 yards, and Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts just couldn't get going. Matt Ryan didn't give him the ball, and Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts didn't get anything going. They had decent time on the ground. Mike Davis wasn't even the leading rusher, and eventually the Falcons defense just got tired out, and Philadelphia had their way with them. This is one that I wasn't really expecting, but a fun outcome nonetheless. Maybe my opinion on Jalen Hurts is improving, and I like to see that, I've always said I need to see more, and today was a good stepping stone in showing me more. And I'm looking forward to next week. Let me just see who they're playing. Next week they have the 49ers, so that's going to be a tough matchup, but we'll see. That'll take us into the second game of the day, which was the Steelers versus the Buffalo Bills. It was a little bit of a weird game. At halftime, it still felt kind of wide open. It was 10-0 Bills. The Steelers really didn't get anything going on offense. The line didn't look too well. They couldn't really make any holes for Najee Davis. Big Ben was under a lot of pressure. Now, is that age? Is that a little bit scared to step up into the pocket? But in the first half, Big Ben and company just couldn't get the job done. They just didn't get the first downs when they needed to. And they played the field position game most of the first half. Josh Allen, of course, did not have a good game. He was overthrowing a lot of people in the first or second quarter. I'm not quite sure when. He had Emmanuel Sanders running wide open, and he just overthrew him. And then he had another Diggs pass that he overthrew later on in the game that really came back to haunt. A few question marks, not going for it on fourth down. That's up to McDermott. Josh Allen looked visibly upset on the sidelines. And when it was that 4th and 2 or 4th and 3 early in the game when they settled for a field goal, Josh Allen was just continuously saying, hey, man, we need to go for this. We need to go for it. But then, of course, we didn't see it. They either ended up punting the ball or going for a field goal. And in a game like this, you needed to get points. And even in the Chiefs game, I'll address the same thing later, where Andy Reid had some questionable coaching decisions. But the defense for Pittsburgh, they showed out. TJ Watt, richest man on defense, just got paid. Obviously wasn't training much. During the offseason, he wasn't training with the team. He wasn't practicing. Now he gets the contract. They were concerned on or how long he could go, how well he would be. And he got a couple sacks in the forced fumble, a big forced fumble that unfortunately they didn't capitalize on, but big nonetheless, It's a disappointing loss for Josh Allen and the Bills. They're 0-1. So is pretty much everybody else in the AFC East other than the Dolphins, which I predicted to win the division. I know a lot of people were hating on me for that, especially Bills Mafia. But, the Dolphins robbed one. And once again, the score for that Steelers versus Bills game was Steelers 23, Bills 16. Next up, we have the New York Jets versus the Carolina Panthers. And the Carolina Panthers take it by a final score of 19-14. Now, we all know that this was the revenge game for Sam Darnold, now on the Carolina Panthers, formerly on the New York Jets. Everyone knows that the Jets got their new man in Zach Wilson. And to be honest, in the first half, it did not look well. I know whenever they always pop up the stats on Red Zone, that Sam Darnold, like halfway through the game at halftime, he had the most yards in the NFL, and good for Mance. I think it was like 263 for a couple scores. But I guess you can call me a Donald hater. I mean, everyone knows I'm not super high on him. I always make fun of the fact that he said he was seeing ghosts against the Patriots. But if Mance has a good game, I'm going to give it to him, And he had a pretty decent game. Like I said, the Jets didn't have much cooking in the first. Then in the second, was it just before halftime or in the second half? Mekhi Becton goes down. Huge loss for him on that O-line, a thin O-line that's gotten injuries in the preseason. And with Mekhi Becton out, it's looking really grim. Now, I know a lot of social media was kind of taking it a little bit weird, saying that he was crying. And bro, emotions run high on that football field. I ain't got no problem with man's crying. He got carted off. And I know a lot of the pro football docs on Twitter, Pro Football Doc on Twitter. Go follow him. He's a good follow. He does the halftime breakdown reports on all the injuries and whatnot. And he said it looks like hopefully it's an MCL. And then I think somebody else confirmed that it's probably going to be an MCL. So that's good news for him. Not going to be out for this season. You always like to hear that. Hopefully he can work back and get back to protecting Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson also throws his first career touchdown, so congratulations to him. I look forward to seeing his success. Moving on, we have the Minnesota Vikings versus the Cincinnati Bengals. And the Cincinnati Bengals defeat them by a final score of 27-24. Took every second of overtime. Man, this was a really great game. And it seemed like neither team really wanted to win it in the final minutes of overtime. Just punting back and forth, trying to get the better field position on one another. It was honestly pretty entertaining football. Congrats to Joe Burrow coming back after a terrible ACL injury last year and looking really good in this win. Also, shout out Jamar Chase for getting his first NFL career touchdown, a 50-yard bomb from Burrow down the fucking right sideline, dusted the cornerback on him. That's what I like to see, especially whenever it came out this week, some misleading news articles that he was having problems with drops and the fact that the college ball has white stripes around it and the NFL ball doesn't. Haters, eat your heart out. I was still not the biggest fan of the pick. I said multiple times that I would have rather them have Penei Sewell than Jamar Chase, especially with the whole injury situation last year. But if this duo continues to impress, I'll eat my words on it. Jamar Chase seems to be like he's a good target. A lot of the rookie wide receivers did well this week one, so I'm happy to see it. Moving on, we have the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Washington football team, and the Chargers take it by a final score of 20-16. Herbert really lit it up yards wise, throwing for 337 yards and a touchdown. And that one touchdown was set up by a defensive takeaway from the Chargers. Obviously, the fumble recovery around the 4-yard line or so, somewhere around there. Obviously, it was Heineke that was in. Unfortunately, earlier in the first half, Ryan Fitzpatrick came out, and it was said later on that he was dealing with a hip injury. So, obviously, full recovery to Ryan Fitzmagic. I hope you get well soon because it did not look good when Heineke came in. They looked lost. Not that they looked great whenever Fitzmagic was in there either, but if I had to pick the two, I'm taking Fitzpatrick. And they just looked a mess on offense, guys. Both defenses performed well. Chase Young obviously didn't have great stats, but he's a part of that defensive line that was putting pressure on Herbert. The back end was giving them some big plays, so that's not on them. And this is a tough loss for Washington, especially if they want to be taken seriously within the division. They are lucky that it's a little bit down in that division, so with a loss, you're still in the thick of things. And the Chargers pull out a game that last year they probably would have lost. So shout out to them. Next up, we have the game of the week involving my personal favorite team, the Kansas City Chiefs, versus the Cleveland Browns. And the Chiefs defeat them by a final score of 33-29. Cleveland led this game for 53 minutes of actual game time, guys. It's crazy. They just extended the lead to 9 with just over 10 minutes left. And what do you know? First play of the next drive, Patrick Mahomes is rolling right outside the pocket and with two dudes all over him, throws a fucking bomb downfield. Tyreek hits the fucking brakes on the guy, comes back, catches the ball because it was underthrown, and just turns on the burners. Turns on the burners to the other side of the end zone, 75 yards, one play. Right before that play, I said, man, we need a touchdown right here. And as soon as Patrick Mahomes was rolling out and that ball was released out of his hands, I said that's a touchdown. What do you know it was? Man, we really needed that energy. The crowd really came through. Everyone that was there, I had a friend there that said, man, that this is probably top 5, top 3 ever Chiefs games they've been to. And I think we broke the record against the Raiders a few years ago whenever it got to 142.2. Shout out to Chiefs Kingdom. We love you. Always supporting the players. You gotta love it. But yeah, our defense finally stepped up after not having a very good first half at all. Chris Jones came through with a couple huge sacks in the second half. We really needed those. It got Baker behind the 8 ball on first down. And then, of course, we all know what happened. He threw the interception whenever he was pressured in the last minute and 40 seconds. It was just a bad pass to Hughes. New addition from the Chiefs this year in free agency. And we closed it out. We performed a comeback, 12-point comeback at halftime. The Chiefs, what a resilient team. You got to love it. Patrick Mahomes, of course, was going off like he was. He owns September. He's unbeatable in September. Added to those stats today, throwing for 3, rushing in for another 1. Although on that rushing touchdown, man, my heart was pounding the bit. He was just showing signs of Lamar Jackson on that one. A little bit of dipping, a little bit of diving, something Josh Allen does. And whenever I was watching the game with my buddy earlier, just watching Josh Allen do that time after time again, I said, Patrick Mahomes gave me a heart attack on that 1 rushing touchdown. I can't imagine your whole franchise doing that 6-7 times a game. It's not for me. We can't forget the muff punt that also allowed us the short field to take the lead. Shout out to the puncher, though. He's a member of the Long Hair Don't Care Club, which I'm also a part of. Although it's slicked back right now in a nice bun, so I'm not going to take it down for you right now. The rushing attack for the Browns, however, today was on point, scoring 3 rushing touchdowns, 2 by Chubb and 1 by Kareem Hunt. Thankfully for the Chiefs, we did get that huge Nick Chubb fumble around midfield that also helped us out. It might not have been pretty at all times, but a win is a win. Start off the year 1-0. That's all you can hope for. Next up, we have the Miami Dolphins versus the New England Patriots. And the Miami Dolphins defeat the Patriots by a final score of 17-16. Tua and the Dolphins go into Foxborough. They beat Mac Jones and the Patriots week 1. Now, with Tom Brady there, they're not too used to that. So this is a new winning culture. And like I said, be on the lookout for the Dolphins, guys. Know a lot of people clown me for picking them to win the AFC East, but they look good. And any good coach team with a game manager and a defense is going to win some games, guys. I'm telling you. Brian Flores going to be a strong candidate for Coach of the Year. Book that. New England largely outplayed Miami, though, dominating time of possession. New England had the ball for almost 37 minutes compared to the Miami Dolphins 23. Tua even threw a horrible interception that lined up the Patriots to win the game on the last-second field goal. But the Patriots' fumbling problems are out of hand. 4 fumbles on the day. We're lucky enough to get 2 back, but 2 hugely costly fumbles. And I know Bill Belichick is not a fan of that style of play. I've once seen him when it was, who knows? It was back in the day. It might have been LeGarrette Blount. He fumbled once on Sunday night. I think they even got the ball back, and he didn't touch the ball again the whole game. Bill Belichick, you need to get these fumbling problems under control. You're losing games here, but the Dolphins get a win that they probably shouldn't have. And when it comes down to tiebreakers later on in the year, New England could be punching themselves, thinking they should have won this one. Next up, we have the Green Bay Packers versus the New Orleans Saints. And the New Orleans Saints take this one by a final score of 38-3. Green Bay, where are you? Did you even get off the plane to come and play? Aaron sure didn't look like he did. It's embarrassing. Just straight embarrassing for the Packers to look like this week 1. You let Jameis Winston throw 5 touchdowns on you guys. Count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 touchdowns. Only 148 yards. Are you kidding me? That hasn't been done since the 1940s. when they were throwing passes with two hands. Give me a break. Rodgers was benched for Jordan Love after throwing 2 interceptions and 3 passes. That is so un-Rodgers-like. So un-Rodgers-like. It's crazy. After that second interception, he just seemed disengaged on the bench, wishing that he wasn't there. And it was ugly, guys. Jordan Love came in, and he didn't look much better. He did not look much better at all. Had a bad fumble. Ball was knocked out of his hands. It did not look good for the Packers, guys. They looked a mess. Hopefully Aaron Rodgers can get it all settled out. But this is really starting to look like rust. It just looked like rust. And I think that Green Bay is going to regret not playing their players in the preseason. Sure is looking that way compared to somebody hungry like Jameis, who's been in a quarterback competition all summer long. The Packers just did not come out to play, and the Saints did. Their defense nearly shut out the Packers, causing 3 turnovers and 0 touchdowns. Good for Jameis. Next up, we have the San Francisco 49ers versus the Detroit Lions, and the 49ers take it by a final score of 41-33. Crazy, crazy game here, guys. When it was 31-10 at halftime, I have to admit I turned it off, and I think a lot of other people too that might have had that game on. I had 4 TVs going myself, so I switched it to another one and was just getting updates on the red zone. But sometimes whenever you're locked into a certain game, you're not even really looking at the red zone. And before you knew it, there was a couple minutes left in the fourth quarter, and it was 41-33 Detroit. I was like, oh my goodness, you cannot let the Detroit Lions scratch and claw and bite kneecaps to a win, especially when you're up that big at halftime. Come on, San Francisco. Deebo Samuel, that huge touchdown. Thank you on my fantasy team. Shout out to you, my man. Well, I turn it back over there when it's 41-31. And Detroit's looking like they're driving. They get a huge penalty that puts them close. And unfortunately, Jared Goff just couldn't get it done. A few incompletions in a row. And I think he might have been even sacked on 4th down, which is also obviously a terrible, terrible thing to do. You can't get sacked on 4th down. You got to go out trying to make a play. Goff also had a terrible, terrible pick 6. And people wonder why I'm not a Goff fan. Well, today was just another reason why. Trey Lance came in the game, threw 1 pass, threw 1 touchdown. Shout out to you, Trey Lance. Everyone knows I'm a huge Trey Lance fan. He's probably my favorite quarterback coming out of the draft. So I like to see that they had at least the red zone package for him. And, hey, he did what he did with what he was given. Threw a touchdown in the only pass, But Jimmy G was super efficient. But San Francisco's defense almost got caught sleeping in cruise control. And you can't do that versus any NFL team. Luckily for them, they did have a lead that was too great, and Detroit couldn't quite come over that hill, but they made it close in the end. And, hey, it sure was entertaining. Next up, we have the Jags versus the Texans, and the Texans take it by a final score of 37-21. Are the Texans better than they thought we were, or did the Jags just really not have that much talent? Man, this is going to hurt me. It might haunt me because I had the Jags in 2nd place in the AFC South. And after today, I don't know, guys. They're making me look like not a smart man. Trevor Lawrence, he had a decent game. He had 3 touchdowns. Hey, 3 interceptions too, though. And 2 of those were just really, really bad interceptions. One was an overthrow. One was just a misread on defense, And if you go and look at his interview afterwards, come on, guys. We all know Trevor Lawrence is a good player. This was his first regular season loss. He didn't have one in high school. He didn't have one in college, in the regular season at least. Just mind-blowing stats, guys. Trevor Lawrence will be fine in the long run. Urban Meyer didn't look comfortable as coach in his first time out there. That's okay. They have time to get better. 16 more chances, but I don't know. The Jags aren't looking as well as they were, in my mind at least. Hopefully Trevor Lawrence can get it situated. Hopefully James Robinson can get more production because he's also on my fantasy team. And, yeah, the Jags is just a disappointing day. But, hey, Tyrod Taylor looked great for Houston, going 21 of 33 for 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and also 40 more yards on the ground. Dual threat, you got to love it. Kept them in the game, and the Jags just couldn't overcome those turnovers. Good job for the Texans on getting their first win of the season without Deshaun Watson. Moving on, we have the Seattle Seahawks versus the Indianapolis Colts. And the Seahawks take it by a final score of 28-16. Just a quick question, guys. Who throws a prettier deep ball than Russell Wilson? You look at the jersey I have on. Some people might say Mahomes, but I don't know, guys. Mahomes throws them, but just Russell Wilson, he just has a different type of touch on him that just looks so fucking beautiful. You have to love his passes. That one to Lockett for 60, 70 yards over the top of the defense. Just pure magic. Russell Wilson stepping up in the pocket and just delivering an absolute dime to Tyler Lockett. Not once, but twice. And that's what you got to love. Russell Wilson had 4 touchdowns. Chris Carson almost ran for 100 yards. And if you look at Wentz's stats, they were padded on that last drive, guys. He wasn't that great. The Colts just couldn't move the ball. They couldn't get anything going on the ground. And the Colts' top 2 receivers were both running backs. That's a problem. Will it get fixed by next week? I'm not sure. But the Seahawks shut up their haters for at least another week. Next up, we have the Arizona Cardinals versus the Tennessee Titans. And the Arizona Cardinals take it by a final score of 38-13. This score is honestly reversed from what I thought it would be. I thought Tennessee was really going to come out there clicking on all cylinders, throwing the ball all over the field, getting into play action with Derrick Henry, but it just wasn't the case. Kyler Murray came out and had himself a day with 5 total touchdowns, 4 in the air and 1 on the ground. If MVP were given after the first week, he'd definitely be in the running. D-Hop and Christian Kirk each catch 2 of those touchdowns, and Chandler Jones absolutely torched the Titans O-line for 5 total sacks. And because he got all those sacks, and because they just couldn't get any passing going, Derrick Henry couldn't get going. And he only had 58 total yards on 17 rush attempts. Not very good for King Henry, especially if he wants to break that single-season rushing record. Next up, we have the Denver Broncos versus the New York Football Giants. And the Broncos take it by a final score of 27-13. Another game that I got wrong, and another quite kind of entertaining game that was going on during the Chiefs game that I did keep a little bit of an eye on, but I wasn't too high on it. Teddy Two Gloves went 28 for 36 for 264 yards and 2 touchdowns. A super Teddy stat line, if you ask me. An elevated Teddy stat line, but a Teddy stat line nonetheless. On those 28 completions, they went to 9 different receivers. That's the definition of spreading the ball around. Unfortunately, Jerry Jeudy did have to leave the game. It was later said that he had a high ankle sprain. And those are really iffy to judge, guys. It can be anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to 6 to 7 weeks if it's really bad. So obviously, hoping that Jerry Jeudy has a quick recovery on that. If you follow Chad Johnson on Twitter, which you should, at Ocho5, he said hit him up. He has the best remedies for ankle sprains. And man, I even responded to him. I was like, man, can I just get that remedy for everyday life? Because, man, everyone knows that, man, you just be tripping on air sometimes. Saquon Barkley was not effective at all, guys. It was looking bad. It didn't look like he was fully recovered yet. And that's really unfortunate. He had 10 rushes for 26 yards. That's a 2.6 average. It's not going to get the job done. I understand that the O-line is really bad, but you're not helping your team at that point. Denver also dominated time of possession with over 35 minutes, and also outgained New York 420 yards to 314, so over 100 more yards of total offense. Good for the Broncos. And finally, we have our Sunday night game, and it was the Bears versus the LA Rams at SoFi Stadium, and the Rams take it by a final score of 34-14. Matt Stafford's second throw as a Ram was an absolute bomb to Van Jefferson. 67 yards. What a way to start your career as a Ram. Cooper Kupp also caught a bomb of 56 yards. Matt Stafford was going good, guys. who's going real good. Justin Fields came in, went 2 for 2. Obviously wasn't enough to really critique or give any type of opinion on, but he looked better than Andy Dalton at times. You just have to give this kid a chance, Matt Nagy. Where's his opportunity? How many games do you have to lose before you throw this guy in? Who cares if you lose? You're already losing with Dalton. You don't have any hope with Dalton. Give the fucking people of Chicago some hope and put Justin Fields in right now. Next up, we have the Baltimore Ravens versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Ooh, what a game this was. It just wrapped up. First Monday Night Football game of the year. What a hell of a game that was. It involved the Baltimore Ravens and the Las Vegas Raiders. And in the first half, it was kind of just seemed like Baltimore just wanted it more. Everybody knows about their running back injuries. Had 3 running backs go down, as well as Marcus Peters, arguably one of their best cornerbacks. But that doesn't stop them, you know. They got Lamar Jackson, which is the best dual threat quarterback in the league. So he was helping them out on the ground. And Tyson Williams had a good game as well. I mean, he's not a slouch. 9 carries for 65 yards. And a touchdown. Not too bad. Tavius Murray also shared some carries. He just wasn't quite as efficient. The former Chief Sammy Watkins had a good game, catching 4 balls and having 96 receiving yards. Derek Carr had a wild night, especially towards the later part of the game, going 34 of 56 for 435 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also an interception, but he throws the game-winning touchdown in overtime. The Raiders couldn't get the rush going, and it looks like Josh Jacobs has some type of bad toe injury, whether that be like a plantar thing, turf toe, whatever it may be. It's looking like he might be out next week. He couldn't really go on it at all. 10 rushes for 34 yards, but hey, he had 2 touchdowns. Marcus Mariota came in for 1 play, had 1 huge rush for 31 yards, and that was it. And Darren Waller had 10 catches for 105 yards. He had 19 targets, though. A couple were dropped. It was a little bit iffy for him in the first half, but so was everything for the Raiders. Back and forth, both teams went in the fourth quarter. It was super entertaining. Eventually, once the Ravens scored, the Raiders would come back and score and just answer back and forth until eventually the Raiders hit a 55-yard field goal to send it into overtime, where they won the coin flip. And they were driving. Derek Carr even threw another great pass, and it looked like they won the game. Down the sideline, dude made a guy miss, and his stretched out knee was just down at the 1-yard line. They try a quarterback sneak, good stuff. Leatherwood, their first-round pick this year, gets a false start, and it's 3rd and 6. And then on the very next play, Carr does Carr things, and he threw a bad interception off a dude's face mask. Eventually, the Ravens secure it, go down in the end zone, touchback. But one of the terrible things that happened to Baltimore this evening was just the fumbles by Lamar Jackson. He had 3 of them. He was fortunate to get 1 back, lost 2 of them, and that's eventually what happened that caused them to lose the game finally. A fumble deep in Raiders territory, getting the opportunity. All you needed was a field goal to win. You have Justin Tucker, just get into range and you win. But hats off to the Raiders defensive line. They got a lot of pressure on Jackson all night, especially Max Crosby. So good game by them. To have it won and then lost, and then they win it again. This is a great opening win for the Raiders, and it's good for the AFC West. I mean, everybody's 1-0, so we'll see where that goes in week 2 coming up. All right, everybody, that was this episode of Average Joe Sports, a sports lovers podcast. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the pod today. If you could, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll be back with another episode soon. Thank you, guys.